everyone. We are Team D and we are going to talk about William Shakespeare. I am Marisol and I am going to talk about his early life.
My name is Raul, and I'm going to talk to you about William Shakespeare's early plays.
Hello guys, my name is Adriana and I'm gonna talk to you about Shakespeare's tragic period and also about some of the books.
Many people think there is not a lot of information about William Shakespeare's life, but today we are going to tell you everything we know about him. Let's begin with the introduction to the life of William Shakespeare. This author wrote more than 3,000 plays and more than 150 poems. He made such a big impression on the human race that there are all sorts of fancies, legends, and theories that have been invented about this author. Like Ben Jonson said once, William Shakespeare was not of an age, but for all time, and he was completely right. Let's talk about his early life. He was born in Stratford-on-Avon, a historic and prosperous market town in Warwickshire. He was christened in the parish church on April 26th. His father was John Shakespeare, that was at one time in the town government. And his mother, Mary Arden, who came from a prominent family in the country. He attended the Stratford Grammar School, where he got education in Latin, the Bible, and English composition. He was also working as a butcher and He attended the Stratford Grammar School, where he got education in Latin, the Bible, and English composition. He also worked with a butcher, and it is believed that he also had many other occupations, since he showed a lot of many skills in his plays. When he was 18, he married a 27-year-old woman named Anne Hathaway, a daughter of a farmer in Stratford. He had 3 children, twins, Hamnet and Judith, and Susanna. His 2 daughters got married at a very early age, and his son died at a very young age as well. Let's now talk about his interest in the theater. It obviously began by seeing plays. Traveling acting companies would travel to Stratford, and he would also attend religious plays in Coventry, a town that was near his city. But let's talk about London. He moved to London in 1587 or 1588, and there's no evidence of his family moving with him. He moved when the theater was flourishing in the 1580s. However, we know that he was busy and successful by 1592. We know approximately when his plays were produced and printed, so we have a lot of documentation about that. He was also very well known as a young man. He was not only an obscure actor. His first bestseller was an erotic narrative poem called Venus and Adonis that was published in 1593. Raul is going to tell us a little bit more about his early plays.
Thank you, Marisol. So some of Shakespeare's earliest plays include Richard III, which is a history play about a deformed usurper who eventually became the King of England. A Comedy of Errors, which is a rowdy farce of a mistaken identity based on a Latin play. There's Titus Andronicus, which is a blood and thunder tragedy full of rants and atrocities. Then the following 3 are comedies, and those are The Taming of the Shrew, The Two Gentlemen of Verona, Love's Labour's Lost, and finally we have the infamous Romeo and Juliet, William's Success and Prosperity. So after all this fame, William Shakespeare told his father to go to Herald's College to apply for a coat of arms, which is basically a crest to signify they were gentle folk. And gentle folk basically means they are people of high society. Okay. And to support this claim that they are a gentle folk, Shakespeare bought a new place in Stratford. And this place was very nice, very spacious, that after William's death, his daughter inherited the mansion, and Queen Elizabeth actually decided to stay in New Place. In 1599, William Shakespeare joined the company Lord Chamberlain's Men to finance the now infamous Globe Theatre. This theater actually ended up being burned down in a fire and now has been rebuilt on the south bank of the Thames River. Dubbed honey-tongued meaning he speaks with sincerity and overall a very genuine speaker. Shakespeare was now earning money as a playwright, as an actor, and as a shareholder. So he was bringing in the money. By 1600, he was regularly associating with members of the aristocracy, and the Queen frequently asked him to put on plays for her. William did a lot of work for Queen Elizabeth towards the end of her reign, and these works include Richard II, both parts of Henry IV, Henry V, and Julius Caesar, which Julius Caesar turns out is the most studied play in schools. A Midsummer Night's Dream. Fun fact about A Midsummer Night's Dream is I was actually in that play, and I played Bottom. He's a character that was used for comic relief and gets turned into a donkey. The Merchant of Venice, Much Ado About Nothing, As You Like It, and Twelfth Night. And he wrote and rewrote Hamlet, which is pretty much his most controversial play and is often debated by actors and scholars alike. And Queen Elizabeth actually had a special request from him. She asked him to write The Merry Wives of Windsor, just so she could see Sir John, who was basically the actor of King Henry. She wanted to see him in a role in which he fell in love. After Queen Elizabeth, King James of Scotland was her successor, and William had good success under him as well. He was an opportunist, so when King James was to become the King of England, he couldn't take over right away because there was the plague, the epidemic was going on, so he couldn't go into his kingdom. So Shakespeare and his company took advantage of it, and they performed for the court and the new king. This delighted the king very much because he wanted to get away from the grimness that was when he was in Scotland. So he renamed Shakespeare's company to the King's Men, and he gave them all kinds of things such as money and clothes, and he made them grooms of the royal chamber. And along with this came more prosperity, which was him investing in real estate, in properties in Stratford and London. Now, Janet will talk to you about William Shakespeare's tragic works.
Thank you, Raul, for sharing us that background. Thank you a lot. Okay, guys, so let's move on. Now I'm gonna talk to you about Shakespeare's tragic period. That in the early years of the 17th century, while Shakespeare was doing really good money, he actually wrote his greatest tragedies. As Raul already mentioned, Hamlet. You also have Othello, King Lear, Macbeth, and Anthony, and Cleopatra. These were his greatest tragedies. Well, because of his plays had this evil, violence, and death, a lot of people thought that Shakespeare was kind of depressed and that he was really unhappy, which was not true. First, such people found the comedies he wrote at this time more sour than sweet, which was not entirely true, but this was just people's opinion, okay? Sorry, he also wrote these other comedies, such as Troilus and Cressida, All's Well That Ends Well, and Measure for Measure. Instead of being amazed, as you can see on this little girl's face, instead of being amazed about Shakespeare's big imagination, people created this tragic period. They were 100% sure that this guy, this Shakespeare, that Shakespeare was really depressed, that he was really unhappy. So they were like, no, no, no. We are pretty sure that he was unhappy. So as you can see on this little guy, they search, and they actually didn't find anything. They found nothing. But they invented some tragic private personal problems. But Shakespeare gave the audience just what they wanted. Shakespeare was not the author who grew to express himself at all. He just grew for the audience, and that's it. He was his businessman, as you have noticed. And so otherwise he could not have made so much money out of the theater. So that's why he wrote all of these evil, violence, and death aspects in his books. Okay, so I'm also gonna talk to you about the last years that he had. After he in 1612, Shakespeare retired to his house in Stratford. This was a pretty handsome house, but his retirement was not complete. He had this idea that he was gonna retire, as I already said. But then we have Kingsman. Kingsman had 2 theaters, so Shakespeare became part of the management of this Kingsman. On your right, you can see the Globe, which was an octagonal building. It opened in 1599, and it was used for performances in good weather. Raul mentioned about this theater. This Globe was actually on a fire, which I'm gonna tell you in a few more minutes. And then on your left, you can see the Blackfriar, acquired in 1608, and it was used for indoor performances, as you can see on the picture. This is just an idea. While he was doing all of these things, he was working. He wrote these 3 books and more. He wrote Timon of Athens. He wrote Coriolanus, and he also wrote The Winter's Tale and more. During the first performance of Henry VIII in June of 1613, the firing of the cannon at the end of the first act set the Globe on fire. Fortunately, the company had the Blackfriars. The Kingsmen had 2. Had the Globe and the Blackfriars. So as they had the Blackfriars, they could perform. They could kept working until it could be reopened in 1614. This fire happened in 1613, and it was reopened in 1614. So it was just a year. Shakespeare spent most of the last 2 years of his life at New Place with his daughter Susanna and his granddaughter Elizabeth. And he died in April 13 in 1616 and was buried under the floor of Stratford Church. And as you can see it on his epitaph, that Shakespeare was really ingenious.